Today's show is sponsored by Indie Film Hustle's Filmmaker Process. We provide filmmakers with professional services to get their films or series funded, finished, and distributed. For more information, go to filmmakerprocess.com.
You actually wrote a sequel to a beloved classic called Dirty Dancing, and you did Dirty Dancing Havana Nights. Now, I particularly liked it a lot because I'm Cuban by birth.
Well, so, you really got talking about things I'd rather not talk about sometimes.
Listen, I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun watching that.
Glad you did.
Apparently, I'm the only one, is what you're saying?
I think you're like the only one. I find it very difficult that it's on my IMDb page, and when I do something else, people are always like, "Oh, from the guy who wrote Dirty Dancing 2," and you're like, "I did a fucking you know." You know what I kind of wish? I know I come off like the crankiest person in the world, and I'm not really. But here's something that's difficult. Talking about screenwriting, by the way.
Sure, go ahead.
As script writers, we have to make a living, right? And I say this, in full, like, we have to make a living. There are a few brilliant people, like Quentin or PT or whatever, that everything they like to do is what other people like to see, and they manage to, right? A lot of us have to make a living, because the stuff that we make, our independent stuff, isn't as successful, blah, blah, blah. You've got to keep a roof over your head, right? And what you can't do as a filmmaker is have a nom de plume, right? Mm-hmm. You can't have a nom de plume. Like, when I do rewrites for Jerry or for whatever, my name is, Jack Ryan, and when I do my own stuff, it's Boaz Yakin, because there's a lot of egos involved and a lot of people's pride involved, right? And so, like, if you're going to do a rewrite for a producer on a project, and everyone, hey, my name is good enough to be on this movie, what your name, it's not good enough for you, Larry McMurtry said something really interesting in this book about script writing he wrote called Film Flam.
I've heard of it, yeah.
And it's like a series of essays about filmmaking. He's a fantastic novelist, right? And he's written some beautiful scripts. That's not really been his focus. But so he has some interesting and always funny and biting stories about Hollywood. And the thing that he says that's so interesting for anyone who takes script meetings or tries to get jobs as a screenwriter or whatever is that there's this sort of illusion in our business that you need to be passionate about the material that you're working on, right? That, like, when you're going to take that writing job for that script about the dog who flies and saves the day, that you can't come in there and say, yeah, I'd like to do this because I just got a kid and I need to build an addendum to the house and I could really use that $150,000. So, yeah, I'm down to write the story about the dog with the cape, right? You have to come in there and be like, when I was a kid, I had a dog, and the dog died when I was 14, and that dog meant so much to me, and I can really identify with this material. I think it's going to speak to everyone who loves it, right?
Right.
And as Larry McMurtry says, some of the worst work ever done has been done by people passionate about that work, and some really incredible work has been done by professionals who decided to do something because they needed to pay the rent and put their craft and an imagination and intelligence to it and fucking knocked it out, right? Like whoever wrote, I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to get into specifics, but there's a lot of very good commercial work that's been done by people who did it with a sense of commitment and intelligence and professionalism, but not because they were dying to tell that particular fucking story, right? And I think that sort of illusion that we need to create, that we're so passionate about everything we do, because otherwise you won't get hired, basically puts people in a situation where a lot of the work that you see, like a lot of, and a name on a script, like whether it's Dirty Dancing 2 or whatever it is, It's like, yeah, you did a job. There were 4 writers on it. What that piece ended up being has very little to do with what you actually wrote. You maybe recognize 3 words of it and some structural changes that you put into it that were deemed significant enough by the Writers Guild committee to give you a credit, right? And you're happy about it because it means you get residuals and you got a credit, and it means you might get another job, right? But does it reflect you as a creative person? No. And you could argue, well, then don't do the jobs that don't reflect you as a creative person, right? If that's going to be something difficult for you later on in life, don't do that job. Don't do things that you don't believe in. I get that point of view. I know people who haven't done it and have done well. I know people who haven't done it and are like out of the business. And for me, it's always been this sort of juggling act of trying to find a way to do things that I like to do that really do reflect my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And things that you go, fuck, if I don't make some money this year, I'm fucked. Oh, this thing? Yeah, sure, I'm down. I know how to do that.
Right, and that's the thing that
being a professional, you know what I mean?
I love that you're bringing this up because it is almost a myth that the struggling artist that's so passionate about everything they do, and you know what? Of course, at a certain level, your private things and things that you do are at that, like, I'm passionate. But man, when I was coming up, I would take jobs directing stuff that I'm like, I don't want, oh God. Or I would do posts, and I'm like, I don't even want my name on this thing, But it was a paycheck, and you have to do, and that's what a professional is. Yes, like you said, there are those few geniuses who get to do both, but those are anomalies. The Coen brothers are an anomaly. P.T. Anderson's an anomaly. Wes Anderson's an anomaly. Tarantino's an anomaly. These guys are anomalies in our business. So for the rest of us, sometimes you got to take jobs that you might not be happy with, or do something else, or figure another way out to tell your stories. I mean, I know the Duplass brothers, they just dropped their budgets down to a place where, like, I could do whatever the hell I want, and they just go out and do it. Great. If that's the kind of storytelling you want to do and that makes you happy as an artist, great. I mean, I heard the story when the Duplass brothers were brought into Marvel and they were offered a movie, and they're like, yeah, we're good. Yeah, we don't want to do that, because they understood what was that going to be entailed, like we kind of talked about today. But that is a myth that needs to be broken, that it's all about the passion, and like, it is about the passion, but man, you got to eat sometimes, man.
Well, yeah.
To watch the rest of this interview, head over to bulletproofscreenwriting.tv.